Welcome to Those Who Can't Do. I am your host, Andrea Forcum, and we have a phenomenal guest for you today. But before we get to that, I'm going to give you a little story from when I was in fifth grade, because that is what our guest teaches. Way back in fifth grade, I had a teacher who was phenomenal. He was one of those teachers who just he seemed so cool and so relaxed and casual and funny. I just had so much fun in his class. I remember doing a lot of really hands-on activities, which for me was ideal. But I also remember that at that time, the school had us in, I feel like in the early, in the early 2000s, late 90s, instead of building buildings for schools, they would just put you into a transitional classroom, which was a trailer. They would put you in double wides, right? That's what we were in. So we were sitting in that double wide, and the school was doing some kind of construction, not on classrooms, mind you, God forbid. They were doing something behind our double wide. And we were sitting in there, and you could hear the beeping from the backing up of the construction stuff. And it was so loud. And I just remember vividly sitting in there and being like, oh my gosh, this is so annoying. Oh my gosh, this is loud. Wow, this is loud. And I must have been doing it quite a bit, because finally my teacher had had enough, and he said, Andrea, your voice is more annoying than that sound. And not only did that shut me up very efficiently, but that line was used on me so often by all of my friends who were in that class for the next 7 years, because I went to a school that was K through 12. So there was about 10 kids that I started with in kindergarten and graduated with as a senior. And so that lovely little group, anytime I was being annoying or talking too much, they would quote that fifth grade teacher who said, my voice was more annoying than that sound. And our guest today, Lauran Woolley, shared about a few times where she said some things to students and then wanted to take it back. And I too talked a little bit about moments where I was maybe, and this is it's going to shock you, I was sarcastic with some kids. And for some reason, when I was sarcastic, they didn't get how hilarious I was. And so I had to apologize. So we have that in common, thankfully. And she also shared about the way that her platform has influenced her career as an educator and also as a dean, because she's doing that now. I can't wait for you guys to hear all of the stuff we talked about. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Welcome to Those Who Can't Do. I have the very funny Lauran Woolley with me today, and I'm so excited to finally get to chat with you. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, I was really excited to meet you too, because I see all of your content and you're just crushing it right now.
Aww.
So I'm always because you're in the high school realm and I'm not. So it's always intriguing to me to see all the chaotic things that happen in a high school setting.
Yeah.
And how they're different.
It is so fascinating to me to see the different types of chaos that we have between elementary and high school, because I went in and helped in my daughter's class. She's in kindergarten right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind, that brand of chaos is just not for me. All of the children wanted to hug me and sit next to me. And I was like, don't my own child.
Don't
yes.
get too close.
Right. And they're all various levels of damp for some reason at all times.
Not the various levels of damp. Oh my gosh. That's so true though.
It's so gross.
No, okay. So I'm an elementary school teacher and kindergarten is not even my level of chaos.
Yeah.
I don't think I could ever do preschool or kindergarten. Talent, I would talk about that all the time. And he would share all these stories. I'm like, dude, I don't know how you did it, because it's just not for me. I'm a, mid-primary to upper elementary school teacher. And that's the one thing. So I'm also the dean of students at my school.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it's kind of I'm a substitute principal sometimes.
Yeah.
So when my principal's out, I kind of handle any kind of issues or, behavior or whatever. And I'll go in and do lunch duty every now and then. And the kids, there's no chill. They just walk right up to you and hug you. they don't understand what personal space is, but it's, best of intentions.
Right.
So I'm just like, oh, thanks, and send them on their way.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the biggest complaints I think I get whenever I do the comparison videos where it's like elementary, middle, and high school, I very
Mhm.
clearly am trying to like make it as young as possible elementary just to make it really contrast with the other grades and stuff. And
Yeah.
it never fails that I get like fourth, fifth, sixth grade teachers in the comments being like, that's early elementary. You're not representing upper elementary. And I'm like, I know, but how like these videos can't be that long. Like
Okay. Um, I get where they're coming from, but also there have been plenty of moments where I'm like, hey, bud, why don't you go get a tissue? Because, like, they've got a runny nose they don't realize that they have. Or, like, they're still children,
yeah,
whether they're fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, kids are kids. So
exactly.
they're going to have the various levels of damp at whatever age they are.
Exactly. So what got you into teaching? Did you always want to be a teacher?
No, actually. And it's kind of like a weird funny story, I guess. I don't know, but like when I was in high school, I had no clue what I wanted to do when I graduated, and it was soon approaching. So I was told by my guidance counselor to maybe job shadow some of the careers that I was interested in. And I don't know about you, but I don't really have very quick access to any like actresses or like comedians. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I won't job shadow those people. But I wanted to do so many different like varieties of things. I was like, at one minute I wanted to be like a pastry chef because I like to bake.
Yeah.
And then another minute I wanted to be a lawyer. And then the next minute I was like, I guess I'll go to Hollywood and I'll try my luck in being like a singer, an actor. And my mom was like, "You should be a teacher." Like out of the blue, like we have no teachers in our family aside from like maybe like distant relatives, but she just was like nothing in medicine because my mom's a nurse.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so you know how like you do something and you're like you don't do what I do.
Right. Yeah.
But which I could never be a nurse because oh my gosh, the things that those people put up with and that they have to do on a daily basis is just astounding to me.
Yeah.
So I could never. But I job shadowed my kindergarten teacher, and oddly enough, it was kindergarten, but I loved it. And I was like, this is what I want to do. So I started in school to do that. And very quickly realized that, the younger elementary was not my vibe.
Yeah.
I student taught in first grade and it was fun, but I could tell like I was too sarcastic for the age
Yeah.
level. Like they just didn't get my jokes sometimes. And that's partially my fault because I'm like, you know, 20 years old thinking these 6-year-olds are going to understand my sarcasm.
Right.
So, the upper elementary, like we have a good time and they get my jokes and they're sarcastic just as much.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of where I got my start.
I got fired from a babysitting job before because I made the kid cry. I'm like one of my first jobs ever. Like I was, second oldest in my family of 4 kids. So I babysat pretty early on. And most of the time it was like toddlers and babies and all of that. But
Mhm.
I remember there was one time my former basketball coach. So I would have probably been a junior in high school. So I was like 17 and
Mhm.
her kids, I want to say were like 7 and 9. And I can't remember what I said to the kid, but he started crying, but he didn't show me he was crying. He went to his room and cried. And I had
Aw.
no idea. I was just like, all right, he's just hanging out in his room. And the parents came home and were like, why is he crying? And I was like, he's crying? Like, what? And then they told me, like, yeah, Andrea, like he said, you said this. And I joked about something and it hurt his feelings. And he was just a very like gentle soul. And
Aw.
yeah, I hurt his feelings. She did not ask me to babysit again after that,
Listen, I'm
unfortunately.
sure I'm sure I've done that at one point or another. I remember one time a kid, like when I taught second grade before, he asked me to use the restroom. And obviously I was kidding, but I was like, I turned to him and I was like, no. And and he looked at me and was like, and I was like, I'm just kidding. You can totally use the restroom. It's a joke. But I mean, I learned my lesson. I was like, okay. don't joke about things that they're asking you to do.
Right.
Because you're going to make them upset.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, maybe this is just, a little too young for the sarcasm.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the biggest guiding forces for me of making sure I was in a high school where sarcasm is like bread and butter of your day. And I had one administrator once I will never forget because I've always been this way where I just am very jokey with my students. Like that's part of like classroom culture, all of that. And I remember there was a professional development and she was talking about how there were some teachers at this school that were very sarcastic with the students and that sarcasm has no place in the classroom. And I was like, oh, girl.
Okay, go have no fun somewhere else.
Right. Like
how do you, this is like one of my biggest gripes about education is that like people expect educators to like be lawyer level professional, like you're about to present a case in court.
Yeah.
Do you realize we are standing in front of a room of 10-year-olds that are worried about what Pokemon cards they have in their binder? Like,
yeah.
No, like the jokes are necessary.
Right.
Like,
they will eat you
they're
up.
a necessity.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It's so funny to me. And like when she said that to me, I was like, is that, and I kind of looked around and I worked with a staff that was a little bit older. I was the youngest one there. And I was just remember being like, nah, like that, like, and that might be her thing, right? Is that she is very intentional about not using sarcasm because maybe she doesn't have a sense of humor. So it always falls flat or something, but
that could be. And I mean, I'm sure, I think I have a hilarious sense of humor and a lot of my jokes probably fall flat too. So like,
undoubtedly, like, and students will let you know. They are a fantastic live audience giving you very direct feedback when your jokes are not funny. But I just know that for me, when I started my year, I would always tell my students, like, listen, like I will treat you exactly how you allow me to treat you. So we can joke, we can have fun, all of that. But if you cross the line, then we got to like lock this stuff down. And I always, as one of my intro things is like I will treat you with respect and all of that. If there's ever something that I say in a joking way and I hurt your feelings or you feel disrespected, like come to me and tell me, I will apologize. Because I did make mistakes. And there were definitely times where I would say something to a kid and I'd be like, oh, that shouldn't have said that. Like that came out a little harsher. And especially if like you're talking to a class or you're talking to like a single student and you say something, not realizing like the whole class is listening and they all react. Whereas like if you were just saying like a jokey thing with that one kid, it wouldn't have been this huge reaction. And I had this one girl who we were sitting there talking. I was helping her at her desk. And the rest of the class was like doing their own thing. And I was chatting with her and I was like, yeah. So she's like, well, I'm going to be hanging out with like one of the guys in the class. And she's like, yeah, like he's gonna take me to the beach later and blah, blah, blah. And I knew she had a boyfriend who she'd been kind of like off and on with and all of that. And I was like, oh, well, what does your boyfriend think about that? And I didn't realize the whole class was listening to me. And so they all reacted and were like, oh, and I was like, oh, no. No. Like that is not like
you can just see like you like future you is like,
I was like, oh no. And like, she turned really red and I was so mortified. And like, I took her aside later. I was like, I am so sorry. Like, I did not mean to embarrass you like that. That was my bad. And she's like, it's okay. But I could tell like it wasn't like I'd embarrassed her. I felt so bad. So, I mean, there are definitely some times where I'm like, all right, maybe sarcasm was not the right move for that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I literally have put my foot in my mouth so many different times. Like it's human nature. Unfortunately, we just say dumb things sometimes that, we think are funny or we think are a joke. And then we end up hurting somebody and we need to, do right by them and say you're sorry and move on and do better. So no, I get it. Everyone does that. I feel like at some point, whether you're a teacher or not, everybody does that.
Yeah. So how long have you been teaching?
This is year 8 for me.
Okay. So when you first started out teaching, do you feel like there was any of those really embarrassing moments where you were like, oh, that did not go as I had intended it to go?
Very many, honestly. I there were like when I was a first year teacher, I thought like, how when you're a first year teacher, you're like, I know everything.
Yeah.
I know I have all of these amazing things I learned from college and they're all going to work perfectly.
Right.
And And, some of them might, but very rarely do all of them go as planned.
Right.
So I remember a few different times I would it was mostly with my classroom management, because when you teach second grade, you need to be on top of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're obviously going to get eaten alive by those kids because they're just so energetic and they need structure. So I was determined to have all of these very structured behavior management plans. And the one that I came up with was, which I don't even think I came up with it. I think I found it on Pinterest or something. But it was like a bathroom sign out. But I was like, oh, instead of having a sign out sheet by the door, boring, I'll have them put popsicle sticks in little library envelopes in their cubbies. And then when they need to use the restroom, they'll just bring one of the popsicle sticks to me. Well, that soon turned into a crowd of people chucking popsicle sticks at me left and right. And it was just in the middle of class, one kid would just go and get their popsicle stick and shove it in your face. And you're like, we're trying to do what 10 times or 10 plus 10 is.
Right.
Can you wait just 1 minute? And then you'd have another kid coming up here going,
right. Just shoving sticks in your face.
Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, having to put them all back into the library envelopes because that was my genius idea. And, not have anybody do that as a job for me.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. Many times I have fallen flat off my face.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like all of us have kind of lived that life. So now you have a massive online platform. It's like over 6 million now between all of the different apps, right?
Yeah.
That's wild. How has that?
It is crazy.
Have you noticed that it's in the classroom? Do kids say anything? Do you notice that the admin kind of interacts with it?
Oh yeah. It's really cool because I never expected to have any that happen. It all kind of sparked from a student and I having a bet. And so it was right before the shutdown from COVID. And I had just started making videos a week before. And a student of mine that had a really hard time in my co-teacher's class, I found out that he really enjoyed TikTok and he would make TikToks with his sister and do pranks and stuff. So I was trying to relate to him and I was like, okay, well, I bet you I could get more followers than you could by the end of the year. and he took on the bet. And so it started and then we got shut down. So, we had nothing but time. So I was just making stuff left and right. And it just kind of blew up from there. And I won the bet. But the funniest part was when it had grown already. I think by the first for full year I had been doing TikTok, it had grown to 2 million followers, and which is I just anyone who already knows me, I hope that is a wild number to me, and it's it's so unbelievable to me. And I'm just very grateful for anyone who's ever watched any of my videos or, left a comment or supported me in any way. And, but it was crazy when I hit 2 million because it was one of our former high school principals. Because my school district is very tiny. So our school district K-12 is all in one building.
Oh man.
And when I say tiny, I mean tiny. We're small. We are so small. So we're all in one building. And I can't remember if it was the girls volleyball team or somebody, one of the sports teams had made it to the regional finals or state or something. And they were doing kind of a mini indoor parade. So they lined up all the kids along the lockers and all the high school kids came out of their classes and stood there and were basically oh, walk down the hall and we'll clap at you guys kind of situation.
Yeah.
And the high school principal was like, well, I think it would be a great idea if you led the parade to celebrate hitting 2 million followers. Which was my literal worst nightmare because as much as I have a following online, I'm a very private person and I I'm an introverted extrovert. Like I'm a people person, but I like my privacy and I enjoy not being in the spotlight all the time.
Yeah.
And so for them to be like, yeah, walk down the hall in front of all the students and lead the charge. I was mortified. And so I'm walking, and not only is it just us walking down the hall, they had the freaking marching band behind us. So I'm just awkwardly walking in front, and then I slowly, like, as the crowd keeps going, I slowly, like, shift behind
You're,
the
trying
sports
to
team.
hide.
I was trying to hide myself. And I mean, I had only been teaching at the school for like 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like, "Hey, how's it
Yeah.
going?" Like,
You had
half
to
the
do
kids
the
don't know who
queen
I am.
wave, right? Like,
Right?
hello, hello.
Right. So we made it, and I was like, "Okay, I hope I never have to do anything like that ever again in my life." Like, it was the worst.
Oh my
I
gosh.
mean, appreciate the effort and the support, but it was
Right.
a lot.
Yeah. I think that's something that people don't really understand about having a platform. And mine is nowhere near where yours is. But when you have a video that pops off, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but I'll see the numbers there, right? But there
Mhm.
it's not real to me.
Mm.
It'll say oh, 3 million people saw it. And I'm like, yeah, all right. And then I went to a basketball game the other day and there's 9,000 people in the stadium. And I was like, man, there's a lot of people here. How many people are there? And it was 9,000. And I'm like, I really like it because you create the content by yourself and then you're
Yeah.
kind of in your little silo and you put it out there and then you see the numbers, but it never feels real to me. And so I'm like,
No.
oh, until I get approached or something like that. Do you have that happen quite a bit?
Yeah, especially in the beginning, it was like I was just posting my videos to no one, like thinking no one's watching this, like it's just for fun, like I'm just doing this for me.
Yeah.
And the more people kept watching it, like, and the numbers started growing, I was like, "Oh my god, Jordan." And like I would just tell my husband, I was like, "Oh my god," I'm like, "This video got 100,000 views."
Yeah.
Or like I remember the first video that I thought went viral
Yeah.
had it got 3,000 views. And my speech, I coached speech and debate at the high school nearby for 10 years. And we were at state and it happened. And I remember the kids were making fun of me, but in a joking way. Like they bought me a TikTok hoodie and they were but it's a wild concept in general to think that there's people out there who know you, but you don't know them. And
Yeah.
it's always mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I don't even realize and I hate to say that I hate when people are like, "Oh, your platform is massive," or "You're a celebrity." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." I'm like, "I'm a teacher from Ohio." Like I don't know who you're referring to, but it's not me.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel real ever.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy.
It is. Well, and there's almost a separation there too, where it's they know the online person, right? They know the online teacher or they've seen, content and all of that. But if they were to sit in your classroom for 5 minutes, they would learn more about you than watching all of your content, right?
Yeah.
I I had, last year when I was still teaching high school, the kids were I had a couple, it was the first time that a couple kids had seen my content before they came to my class. And it was about 5 minutes in where it was no longer fun and cool because I was just an English teacher and they were still getting homework and it was still I wasn't up there doing live comedy for them.
Yeah, no, I get that same thing. That happens to me too. Cause with my school being so small, I can walk down the hall and I have kindergartners who know who I am. And I'm like, "I won't have you for another 6 years. Bye."
Right.
But they'll still come up to me and they'll be like, "I watch your videos." And it's a running joke. When the little kids say they watch my TikToks, I'll go "What's TikTok?" And then they're like, "TikTok." I'm like, "I like the orange Tic Tacs." It's just been a running joke. So I do that every time. But it's they know me before I ever have them. And then they all want to be in, my class, or they, not all of them, but some of them want to be in my class. And then they realize oh, she's an actual teacher and I have work to do.
Right.
Yeah, and it's kind of sometimes it's a reality check for them.
Yeah, the
'Cause, like,
disappointment is like palpable when kids are
oh
like,
yeah,
"Yeah, like like videos are super funny." I'm like, "Thank you. Get your book out." Like,
yeah,
and they look completely
exactly.
shocked and I'm like, "My guy, like you like my videos are literally like me interacting with kids that aren't doing their work. Did you think there would be no work?" Like,
Right. Or like, especially now that the weather is getting nicer here, it's like every day is like after lunch, they just assume that we're done. So it's
yeah.
like, okay, let's get out our science, our Chromebooks and get on science or whatever. And they'll be like, all right, so like what time are we gonna go outside again? I'm like, I don't know. If we get all our work done, like sure, but you guys got 30 minutes to do two assignments.
Right? I honestly that's so
So
relatable though. I feel the same way. I'm like, "Hold on. What's the temperature
yeah.
right now?" Like if it's over 60 degrees, and this was my first Midwest winter that I've experienced. So I
So I don't know if this is like and you can cut this out if this is not public knowledge. Like
okay.
where are you at?
Yeah, it's public. I'm in Terre Haute. I work at Indiana State
Oh,
University.
okay.
So
Okay. So we're not far away.
no, we're not. And
Oh,
it's
interesting.
yeah, which like it's I feel like this winter has been very gentle on me. It has not been a particularly harsh winter, but
Mhm.
I already feel like the vibes of like if it got over 60 degrees and the sun was shining, I probably would be just like those kids, just as bad and be like, "Okay, let's put a button on this thing, wrap it up because I need to go outside."
Okay. Okay, I'm glad you said that because in all reality, over the past few weeks, like so I don't know if you're familiar with Ohio weather, but Ohio can have all 4 seasons in 1 week.
Yeah.
So 1 week in particular, it was like 75 degrees on a Monday. So we took the kids out for a little bit of extra recess. And then in the afternoon, because we're so small, we're able to combine classes sometimes and like co-teach.
Yeah.
So the other fifth grade teacher and I, we were like, so how do you feel about taking science outside today? Or how do you feel about reading books outdoors?
Yeah.
Like anything to get outside. Like
Right.
I just want to, enjoy the 75 degrees before it snows tomorrow.
Exactly. Well, yeah, because it feels so fleeting sometimes. And I mean, even when I was
Mhm.
in Southern California, where it's pretty much 70 and sunny most of the year, we still would find reasons where we're like, you know
Yes.
what? Like, let's just not be inside right now. And like, I
Yeah.
am terrible when I have to sit in professional development all day. I get so jittery. I can't wait to move and get
Mhm.
outside and all of that. So, like, I can understand why when they're stuck inside, like class after class, why they're like, can we just not be inside in these fluorescent lights anymore?
It's the worst. Okay, so is it just me or do other people feel this way too? Whenever we have professional development coming up, there's a little piece of me that's like, oh, yes, a break. Like
Hmm.
I can just sit there and pay attention to the meeting all
Right.
day and just kind of relax my brain. And then the meeting actually happens and I'm like bored to tears and wishing that I was teaching again.
Exactly. Yeah. No, every single
Like,
time I'm like, oh, this will be great. I can just like be a sponge and absorb. But then
yes.
eh, and there's like the stereotype of the professional development that is from someone who's never actually taught the content or hasn't been in the classroom for 20
Yeah.
years and all of that. And there is some truth to that. But I really do try and not be that person that just like poo poos on whoever's there to like share
Right.
the stuff.
Yeah. No, I felt that way this year. We had a professional development that was dedicated completely, like we had a whole 2 hours dedicated to AI and talking about AI.
Oh, that's
And you
great.
could tell who the people were that were like, not veteran teachers yet.
Yeah.
And then, which ones were not new teachers just yet because there was a clear divide on like, yeah, we should totally be using AI versus like, no, don't ever use that. And it was like some people were just, sometimes people just ask questions during meetings. Like they pose it as a question, but really it's like to poke a hole in somebody's, like whatever they're presenting.
Yeah.
I'm like, just let them present their
Right.
information. Like,
Yeah, the ones that like when their questions are more just like a criticism of whatever's being presented. Like, well, what do you do when the
mhm.
kid refuses to do anything and just sits there and stares at you? Can AI fix that? It can't.
Right.
Like, okay.
Like,
Whoa.
okay, you didn't have to come in so hot.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
Put it in the suggestion box and we'll come back to that one.
Right. Like, and I do try and empathize. And that is one of like my biggest fears because I've had, and I'm sure you have as well, had schools reach out about doing professional development. And I've been very hesitant to do it because even though I feel like I have good things to share, I remember sitting next to the senior teachers that had been teaching for 20 years who had like a couple years left until retirement and just hearing their constant like, this is the dumbest thing. This isn't going to work. We tried to do this 5 years ago in a different version. We called it this, but blah, blah, blah. And like, I am as scared of them as I am of like middle school girls, you know, like it's like the same energy, like, like really
Why are
mean.
they so scary?
I don't know, but I'm like, okay, can't do it.
There's a John. Are you familiar with John Mulaney?
Yes.
Okay, so he makes a joke that he's walking down the street or something, and there's a group of eighth grade boys or something. He's like, and eighth graders will point out the thing about you that you don't like about you, and it's like, and I'm like, I feel that because even though I teach elementary school, my fifth grade classroom is in a middle school hallway.
Ugh.
So the end of the hallway, we don't go down there. Like that's the 7th and 8th graders, and they're scary. Even though I've had them in class,
yes,
like. All of them. I've had all of them in class and it's still like, I'm like, oh, you're big and scary now. Yeah. So I guess I just,
but hormones, it's terrifying. And they always figure out whatever you're like anxious about or whatever your self-esteem.
Your insecurities.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw the trend recently and it just made me so uncomfortable. There was a bunch of videos where people were posting like, can you tell what my biggest insecurity is? And it was
I don't think I've seen this.
Oh my gosh. It was on, I feel like I mostly saw it on Instagram and it was all females that I saw doing it where they were like, if you can't tell what my insecurity is, like I probably can't tell what yours is either. And it's meant to be like uplifting. But instead, what of course happens is people are like, it's probably your nose, right?
Okay, maybe I saw one video like that, and it's only because you made the comment about the nose, because I'm pretty sure the girls' video, there was one where someone was saying that. I'm like,
I know, I'm like,
oh my gosh.
The way I would never post that video because I'm like, I don't need more insecurities. I already had someone DM me and tell me I had a 5 head for no reason, just out of the blue.
Okay, funny story, and hopefully this will make anybody who has insecurities feel better about their own insecurities. So I have had awful teeth my entire life. Like I have had braces and surgeries and teeth pulled and all that. Just never, I wasn't given the perfect teeth gene.
Yeah.
So I had one of my teeth never came down and they had to actually like go in and pull it down. So I have like exposed root on my tooth. And so therefore one of my teeth is like slightly discolored from the rest of my teeth. And it's like, it's this one right here.
Oh, okay.
It's like, yeah. And like, I know it's there.
Right.
I can see it. But, you know, I get comments every now and then. People are like, why is your one tooth yellow? I'm like, oh, I guess I never noticed. I know that. Like, but that just goes to show, like, maybe, you know, think before we speak or comment.
Right.
Because and this is coming from someone who's also said things that, you know, I've probably thought back on and been like, not a good look.
Right.
But you know, it takes literally a millisecond for you to think, is what you're saying, you know, going to contribute to society in some way? Or am I just pointing out something just to be some sort of way?
Right.
And, you know, to that one person who commented on thank you for making me aware of my tooth. I had no clue, but I appreciate your observational skills. I'm working on it.
Right.
But like, it's like those kinds of things. Like, those are the things, like those things don't bother me on the internet. Like, I don't really get a lot of those comments, but like, I remember at one point someone was like, oh my gosh, her makeup. I would never let my daughter be in a classroom with someone who has makeup like that. And I had like winged eyeliner.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, oh, okay.
All right. Well,
well, sorry.
Yeah. There are always like out of pocket comments. Every time I open one of the apps, I'm like, all right, what's it going to be today? And I will share one of the wildest ones, but I'm going to wait until we get back from our break. So we will be right back. And welcome back. So, the thing that someone commented is something that I am actually like, I don't feel that insecure about it. I forget about it entirely. And it really surprised me when someone commented on it because it's not one of my insecurities. Like, I have quite a list, but this was not on it. And somebody pointed out that one of my pinkies is I'm not gonna deformed seems aggressive. It's substantially smaller. I will show you. So one pinky is basically like a 5-year-old's pinky. Like this pinky goes up.
I'm like, wait, I gotta check my pinkies
Let
now.
me make sure I don't have the same thing. Like,
okay,
I have.
See, but I wouldn't say that that's like it's significantly smaller.
I mean, it's different enough that when I get my nails
like
done,
a centimeter.
It's but like if you can see, like it's a
oh yeah, when you get your nails done, I didn't even think of that.
They have to use like a child's nail thing because the bed of this nail is like short and fat and wide like a child's hand. Because when I was 5 years old, let's be very clear. My older brother, it was his fault because we were playing and he's 2 years older than me. We were playing under the stairs. We were building a fort. I was like 4 or 5 years old and he had this big oak coffee table turned on the side. And it was one of the stairwells where you could go underneath the stairwell. And so I was underneath the stairwell and he was trying to set up the fort. So he had the big oak coffee table turned over and he was going to push it over to close up the opening to the stairwell. And he said, Andrea, don't put your hand here. I'm going to move this table. And me being me, I'm like, don't tell me what to do.
I'm going to put my hand under that table.
Right there. And so I do. And he moves the table and it crushed my pinky on the growth plate. And
Ouch.
Yes. And to this day, I still joke with him. I was like, well, if somebody hadn't broken my pinky, he's like, I told you not to put your hand there.
Okay. So at first I was going to take your side.
Yeah,
Andrea.
it's fair.
I was going to be like, you're a brother. And then you were like, he told me not to do it.
Specifically and explicitly. And then told me why I should not do it. And I was still like, don't tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me, good sir. And yeah, completely crushed it. And some random guy in the comments was like, is your pinky smaller on one hand? And I'm like, how did you even notice that? Like, what a very specific thing. Because like I gesture, but like who is zooming in like that?
That is a very oddly specific thing to pay attention to. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but like for one thing, I don't watch a lot of the internet anymore now that I'm like literally on it constantly. Like when I first started out, I could binge watch TikToks for hours.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, all right, scroll, post, done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want, like, I try not to like get sucked into the vortex.
Yeah.
But like when I'm watching videos, I'm not paying that close of attention to like those minuscule details, I guess.
Right.
And on top of that, like, I wouldn't go out of my way to comment.
I know.
To let somebody know, hey, your pinky.
Right.
Like,
or your tooth. Like because I've seen like tons of your videos and never a single time have I been like, wow, I see it. That tooth is a marginal shade different color than the other. Like, who does that?
It's actually, it's a running joke in my family because like everyone knows about it. So like we call it mega tooth. Because it's huge, like, because the root is exposed, so you can see, like, from my tooth up to, like, the root of my tooth.
Oh, my gosh.
So, like, what you can't see it, like, when I smile, but, like, if I, like, just...
Oh, wow.
Like, you can see it all the way up there.
Yeah.
Now we're into dentistry.
Right.
But it's just, like, a running joke, so, like, it doesn't bother me, but it's, like, the fact that somebody else saw it and was like...
Let's point that out. Let's go ahead and dig into whatever's going on there. Yeah, it is a very strange dichotomy of like putting yourself out there and being online and then anonymous profiles commenting on your appearance or your voice or any of those things. And I'm always just like, just keep scrolling, my guy. Like,
right. Like, and that's kind of, I don't know. That's where I'm coming from too. Like, I would never go out of my way to comment something negative to somebody like on the internet purposefully to hurt them.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I just feel like, what's the good in that?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I will go out of my way to comment, to like say nice things to people.
Yeah.
But just to like, I don't know. It just seems like, I try to take comments with a grain of salt because, sometimes there is truth in what they're saying. You got to find the little minuscule detail of truth. And sometimes it's like, okay, maybe this person was hurt by someone and
Maybe this is about what they've got going on.
They're projecting on me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely have learned that skill with being on the internet, having to grow a thicker skin, which is not working very well. I mean, like, I've been on the internet for 4 years now, and it's still growing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, what's funny though, is like and this is probably a terrible thing to say, but there was a certain level of trolling that actually did help me in some ways. Cause when I started making content, I still had a hardcore side part and I still was wearing black eyeliner all the way around my eyes.
So was I.
Yeah. And I got trolled right out of that and into a new era of style because people let me know.
I feel like I'm going through this, like, maybe not, like, I had the side part before.
Yeah.
I've gotten over that, but I feel like, okay, so this year I turned 30 and I'm not like afraid to turn 30. I'm not like, birthdays don't freak me out, but I'm going through that point in my life where I'm like, I am cool. I am young. And then someone will point something out and I'll be like, oh my God, am I old now? Like, am I the uncool one now? And
that's when
like,
it's starting. Yeah. That's
right. Right. It's like, okay, like the one right now that is just throwing me is the jeans.
I can't, Lauran. I can't.
Okay, I'm trying really hard. I have gotten some straight leg jeans. I've gotten some like of the bigger, baggier, like 90s style jeans.
Yeah.
And I do wear them, but like I'm a curvy girl.
Yeah.
Like I don't have like I'm not a stick figure, and I don't know. In my head, I am seeing a different image than, what I see. Like other curvy girls, I'm like, you guys look awesome in these clothes. I don't look like you. I'm like, someone dress me, please.
No,
like,
literally.
I did this literally the other night, Jordan and I. So we're going to Myrtle Beach for spring break. And I was like, I don't have any like nice jeans that I feel comfortable in. So we were like just scavenging for pants. And I ended up going to Buckle, which I hate Buckle. Like, but it was like my last resort. And so we walk in and I found these like a couple of pairs of jeans, and I actually ended up liking them and I bought them. But I had to ask the girl, I was like, what kind of shirt do I wear with this? Like, what do I do? And she like had a similar like body type to me. Yeah. And so I was like, so like, what do I do? Do I tuck it?
Is it like a front, like a front tuck is like not?
Is it a side? Do I not? I'm like, because I don't know. I feel like I'm still in the phase where I could wear a crop top, but like, I don't wanna.
Right. Right.
So I was basically like, dress me.
Yeah.
Please dress me.
Yeah. 30s is like no man's land for style because you're not trying to like purchase things with Kohl's Cash yet, but you're also like, you can't be in that Mrs. department. It's not going to work. It's not going to happen. It is a terrible thing that happens when you hit your 30s and you're like, okay, I cannot wear what I wore when I was in college. It'll look like I'm trying way too hard.
Yeah.
And especially as a teacher, because we're also tend to dress just a little bit more covered because our jobs require a lot of movement and all of that stuff. And then, but you don't want to dress like this is one of my things right now is I think the reason that Gen Z looks so much older than the millennials did at that age is because they are dressing in our parents' styles in like an aggressive way. Like there are these like mule clog shoes that I've seen so many.
I had those. Okay, are you talking about the Birkenstock type ones?
So not even.
Or are you talking about the actual like
Like the mules, like the slide-on mules,
Okay.
and, like, my grandmother literally had those, and then she would have, like, the trouser
Yes.
pants and this polyester top, and I'm seeing these cute
Yes.
little, like, 20-something girlies wear it, and they look adorable, and I'm like, "That's 'cause you're 20, though, so you can do
Right.
that." If I did that, I would not look adorable, I would look, like, really old and weird, and, like, it is the
See,
struggle.
I feel like bringing this back to teaching, my first year teaching, I feel like I dressed like I was like, and no offense to anyone who is in this age range, I feel like I was dressing like I was 45 years
Yeah.
old. Like I had 2 kids in a minivan and I was going to soccer practice, and that's not a bad thing. I was 22.
Right.
Like I felt like I made myself grow up really, really fast.
Mhm.
And like, I don't know about you, but my college was like, you need to wear a button up shirt and a blazer and dress pants every day. And like,
Yeah.
you need to dress like you're a businesswoman.
Mhm.
And so for my first year teaching, that's how I would dress. I dressed in like, dress pants and like a dress shirt. And I'd go to school and be on the ground with second graders and,
And, like, dress
uh,
pants.
yeah,
Mhm.
and it just makes 0 sense to me. I'm so grateful to my new school. Like, I don't have a dress code at my school. Basically, as long as you look presentable and you're not coming to school in pajamas, like you're golden.
Yeah.
So, like, I wear like I got these like the Spanx leggings
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah.
they look like faux leather almost,
Yeah.
kind of. And I'll just wear like oversized shirts so they like cover everything, and then like a shacket or whatever. I'll wear that, or even now I'll wear like leggings and like a long sweater or something like that. But it's very rare that I even wear dress pants anymore.
Yeah.
Joggers, a lot of joggers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally with you with that. Like it's like, okay, I felt like I had my fashion on lock and then it shifted and I didn't know what to do.
I know, and I was fine with it until I saw like, especially, like, with the dark eyeliner thing, because I did it since I was 16, and then
Mhm.
somebody commented and said, in a very sweet way, like "You have such pretty eyes." They, like, sandwiched it, right? They're like, "You have such pretty eyes. Dark eyeliner all around your eyes is like wearing the jean dresses that our teachers wore when we were in school. I think you could look a lot prettier with lighter eyeliner," And I was like, "Oh, that was brutal, but I
I
accept."
love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
They took me down.
I even look at pictures of me just from like 20, even 2018. I'll even go as early back as 2018, and I'm like, "Who the heck are you? Like, who let you do your makeup like
Right?
that?" Like, I mean, I didn't even bother doing any kind of contour. I just slapped on whatever because I'm pale. So
Yeah.
like I would just slap on my foundation, throw some blush on there. And then I would use I never even used like real eyebrow makeup. It was I would take a dark eyeshadow and just fill
And
in
just
my
make it
eyebrows.
happen.
So they're just like like huge on my face.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I look at my husband, I'm like, why didn't you say
I
something?
know,
Like,
they're oblivious. It was the days
yes.
before we had Michaela on TikTok to, like, guide us into the light, And even, like,
Oh
if you
yeah.
look at Michaela, what's her last name?
Naguera
Yeah.
or something. Look, I something
I
like
only
that.
ever hear her called Michaela, but if you look at her styles from back when she was younger too, like, she was on that same trend as us, like, just doing her best and using whatever for her eyebrows and all of that, but Uh,
Yeah.
so one of the things that we do is we take questions from listeners, and then you and I get to take a shot at answering the question that was submitted. So
Okay.
the one of the questions that was submitted was, how long did it take for you to learn to say no and feel comfortable that you weren't risking next year's contract?
Ask me next year. No. Um Honestly, I still struggle with that. I feel like if I'm being honest, I would like to say that there's a certain year where you're just like, you know what? I've been here long enough. They're not going to get rid of me. Um, but I feel like for me, like it's more of my personality. I'm a people pleaser. And so I will just, run myself ragged trying to do everything.
Yeah.
And I kind of am doing that this year. I'm on like a billion different committees at school, and it's a lot, but like I genuinely enjoy those things though. Like I like keeping busy and working. So it's, fun for me. But I feel like there's a way that even if you are afraid of like risking your job, there's a way to say no in a way that is not harsh or, coming off as like you're not interested because you just don't want to, or,
Right.
and it's fine if you just don't want to.
Yeah.
But, you could say it like tactfully so that it's, respectful, a respectful no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I would really love to, but I just have so much on my plate right now. I don't want to disappoint anyone. Or like, thank you so much for the offer. I would love to participate in something like this in the future.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I had somebody, I can't remember who it was that told me to do this, but when somebody comes, because I tend to be somebody who says yes right away and then regrets it. And I was so frustrated where I'm like, yes. And then later I'm like, why did I say yes to that? That like, I don't want to do that. And so something somebody told me is, and it might've been my department head at my last school, where she said, tell them, you know what? Let me think about it and I will send you an email later today, and get into the habit of doing that. And you can still say yes once you've had a second to like actually think about your responsibilities. But then it takes away like that awkward, like in-person piece of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then send an email later and do like what you said, where you're like, hey, like I would really love to. I'm really honored you're thinking of me for this. However, I want to make sure that I'm meeting all of my obligations to the best of my ability. And right now my cup's just a little full. So, thanks for thinking about me, but not right now. And that kind of takes away like, some of the sting.
Yeah, no, entirely. And then also, I think sometimes we build up that feeling of, oh my gosh, my job's on the line in our heads a little bit more than maybe it is. Yeah. And it's very valid of a feeling. It really is. And it depends on, where you work, what state you live in, and what district you teach at and things like that. But even at my previous job where I, didn't feel supported by my admin, I never felt like my job was on the line.
Right.
Like they were going to fire me if I didn't say yes.
Yeah.
But, they put pressure, but I didn't feel like that. So if you feel like that, I'm so sorry, because that is a lot of pressure and that sucks. Like that's not right if they're doing that to you, or if you're in an environment where you feel like that, or you feel like you can't voice your feelings and your opinions honestly.
Yeah.
Then, maybe you need to look for a different environment to work in also, because that ended up being the cure for me, because I almost quit teaching like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was all because of the place I was working, not that I didn't like my job or that I didn't like teaching. So that could also be, playing a part.
Agreed. And that's the recommendation I make for a lot of people who are like, hey, I'm dealing with like this really difficult admin, or I'm getting put like so much pressure is on me and I'm really being run ragged and all of that. And I'm like, okay, like hear you, totally valid. Do you think that maybe there's a different school that might better fit with, the way that you teach and all of that kind of stuff? Because I agree. Also, risking your contract for next year, like there is a teacher shortage. Like I don't know many districts that if the teacher is good at their job, right? Like if the teacher is like
you're okay.
Yeah, you're good if you don't want to go and like chaperone the dance, probably. Like
unless there's like, unless enrollment is really down, like I feel like you're okay right now, because and you're exactly right. There is a teacher shortage.
Yeah.
And it's crazy out there right now. And I, even with giving the idea of like, okay, well, maybe find another environment to go to. I know that's easier said than done. I lived that for 3 years.
Yeah.
I had to stay at my job that I was literally an anxious, nervous wreck going to every single day, because I couldn't get a job anywhere else. And I had applied year after year after year and didn't get hired anywhere else. And I get that it's, it's not always easy to find another job, but just keep up the hope that, the right environment will come.
Yeah.
And just don't stop trying if you're really unhappy with where you're working.
Yeah.
And I would say that for like anyone who feels like, maybe teaching's not for me, maybe give it a shot in a different place.
Yeah.
Because that was the case for me. I thought, I was like, maybe this is not what I meant to do.
Yeah.
And then I changed environments. I have very supportive administration. I have great colleagues. I have great students. I have great parents. And I feel very lucky to have that.
Yeah.
But I get it. If you're stuck in a place where you're unhappy, maybe give it another shot, try somewhere else before you decide to leave altogether.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've heard that from a lot of different educators that were struggling and looking at like maybe leaving teaching. And then they went to a district that was more supportive and admin that was more supportive. And it like completely 180'd them. And now they're back in love with teaching again. Before I let you go, I would love for you to share where people can find you, any big projects that you have coming up that people can look out for and all that good stuff.
Well, you can find me on any social media, like YouTube, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, all of those at Mrs. Woolley in 5th, 2 O's, 2 L's. And then as for big projects, I'm working on something with Mrs. Miller. I can't talk about what it is yet, but excited about that.
Right. And those of you who don't know,
hopefully this summer.
She's the sticker teacher. That's usually how I know who Mrs. Miller is.
She is the desk fairy / pencil teacher / sticker store teacher.
Yes.
Love her. She was like one of my first friends from like TikTok. And then I'm also starting like a small company with my husband. So we started working on that, and I'm going to grad school. So for my second master's degree. So a lot of stuff going on.
Nice. That's awesome.
Pretty busy.
So you're not sharing yet what the business venture is. It's just, it's forthcoming.
I can share that it is in the education software realm.
Okay. Awesome. Well, that's super exciting. It sounds like you have a lot of really cool projects coming out. And I adore Andy Miller as well. She's also one of my first friends who like came alongside me when I had like 30,000 followers and shared all of her wisdom with me and was so kind and so gracious. So I love that you're working with her. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come out with.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart. And like whenever I try to make a point to go out to see like all my friends in California at least once a year.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll get to see her again this summer. But yeah, a lot of really awesome teacher friends on social media.
Yeah.
So if you're also a teacher on social media, reach out, make friends with other teachers on social media, because you can always learn a ton of stuff from each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. This was so much fun. Thank you, Lauran. I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Those Who Can't Do. I had so much fun commiserating with Lauran about the struggles of being a teacher and figuring out your fashion in your 30s and all of the other things that we deal with as educators. It's so funny to me that even as an elementary teacher, she still sees like early elementary as like a stark difference. Because as a secondary teacher, I always thought of just like elementary as like one blob of various levels of dampness for students. But as Lauran shared, there's varying levels. And I've definitely heard about it online whenever I do my like comparisons of like elementary, middle, and high school. I always hear like, you're just doing early elementary, you're not doing upper elementary. And I think one of the reasons for that is that, number one, I had a really phenomenal early elementary teacher who was my kindergarten teacher, who I just absolutely adored. So I kind of channel her. And also, I have a kindergartner at home. So I'm kind of imagining the way that, you know, she gets treated at school and all of that. And I also thought it was hilarious hearing that both Lauran and I have that real deep-seated fear of middle school girls, because they are, I think, some of the most terrifying beings in the universe. Speaking of middle schoolers, one of the stories that was submitted to me this week for What Are Those Kids Doing was that a teacher was talking about a TikTok that they had seen. And the middle school student said, I don't know why you're talking about TikTok. We all know that you watch Instagram Reels. And like to an average observer, that might not seem like such a brutal takedown, but there is definitely a generational thing of like, oh, you watch Instagram Reels, not TikTok, because millennials tend to be a little bit more over on Instagram. I was talking at CrossFit this week to a couple of people who work in the school system. One was a principal and the other one was like a behavior interventionist. And we were talking about TikTok and they're like, well, we're not on TikTok. We're on like Instagram Reels. I'm like, okay, so you eventually get the content. Like it eventually makes its way kind of to where, you see it. But it's kind of like the same generational divide as like Instagram to Facebook. So kind of a brutal takedown from that student. While at the same time, another middle school teacher submitted that a bunch of sixth graders were bringing in literal rubber ducks. Like that's not a euphemism for anything. They were just bringing in rubber ducks, which I think is the perfect dichotomy of what it is to be around middle schoolers, where they're like in some ways so old, but in so many other ways, they're just such little kids, which I think is the magic of middle school, but it's also why I fear them, because you just don't know what is going to come out of that little crock pot that is middle school. If you have something that has happened in your classroom and you want to share it with us, I want to hear about it. So you can contact me on Instagram or TikTok at Educator Andrea, or you can email us at andrea@human-content.com, or you can contact the entire Human Content podcast family at Human Content Pods. This is a new podcast, so I really appreciate you guys going in and leaving reviews and feedback. It means the world to me. And we are going to be keeping an eye on that. And we will finally be going in and giving some shout outs at the end here as you guys start to submit your reviews. I cannot wait to read them all. And if you want to check out full episodes, they're up every week on YouTube at Educator Andrea. Thank you so much for listening. I am your host, Andrea Forkham. A very special thank you to our wonderful guest, Lauran Woolley. Our executive producers are Andrea Forkham, Aaron Corney, Rob Goldman, and Shanti Brooke. Our editor is Andrew Sims. Our engineer is Jason Portizo. Our music is by Omer Benzvi. Our recording location is Indiana State by College of Education. To learn more about Those Who Can't Do's program disclaimer and ethics policy and submission, verifications, and licensing terms, you can go to podcasterandrea.com. Those Who Can't Do is a Human Content production. Thank you so much for watching. If you're like me and you're thinking, gosh, I really need more Those Who Can't Do in my life, you can start your binging right now by clicking on that playlist button right over there. New episodes are out every Thursday, so please subscribe and join us each week on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.